The Alien comics usually focus on synthetics and colonial marines doing their thing in the far reaches of space, but with Alien Kingkiller, the currently ongoing 5-issue limited series, writer Saladin Ahmed changes the formula. Instead of a colonial marine, we've got a cyborg doing all the fighting this time, and unlike the morally complicated Weyland-Yutani-linked Morrow from Alien Earth, this cyborg initially reads more like a brutal but sympathetic protector. He appears to be the fourth sibling connected to the three kings, but unlike them, Idris is now a wandering killer hunting his former family down. But why is he doing this? What are his powers? Just how strong is he as a cyborg king killer? And with a title like King Killer, the big question is obvious. Is Idris only hunting human kings, or is the comic building towards something even worse in the Xenomorph hive? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's why in this video we'll be exploring 2 of the already released issues from the 5-issue Alien King Killer run. So without further ado, let's get right into it. It's going to be a good one. Issue number 1. The price of weakness is death. The comic begins on Sovereign, a colony world. The comic never tells us whether Weyland-Yutani, another company, or independent settlers originally built Sovereign, so for now, let's just treat its origins as deliberately unclear. But it is named Sovereign, even if it's spelled a little differently, so maybe, just maybe, this was actually settled by regular people who wanted to escape the rule of corporations. Honestly, I'm rooting for them already. We're introduced to a couple of people in Sovereign, an old man and his grandson named Mouse. They were exploring what looked like a wasteland as it existed outside a once prosperous city. Grandpa was taking Mouse to see a surprise, but Mouse was afraid of surprises. Sovereign hadn't been kind to him, and usually, surprises meant shocks, xenomorphs, or death. But Gramps tells Mouse that if he had seen Sovereign before it was overrun by Xenos, he would have had a different opinion. And despite the whole planet being a Xeno hunting ground now, the place still had a few good things left. That's when Mouse sees the beautiful sunset, something he's never seen before because of the high walls built around one of the last human settlements, which is where the pair lives. The two sit and watch the sunset, and from their conversation here, we learn a few things about Sovereign. You see, Gramps and Mouse didn't leave the safety of their walls and come out here of their own accord. They were forced to do so by the Red King, the man who ruled the quadrant where Mouse's colony was located, and it's later revealed that his real name is Amir. Amir wanted his subjects to bring him any piece of technology they could find in the wastes, in exchange for which they would be given rations and supplies. And the man ran a tight ship because as soon as Mouse said, "Screw the Red King" for sending people out here to get killed, Gramps shut him up, because if the King's men heard him, they'd shoot Mouse dead without caring about the fact that he wasn't even old enough to shave. And that's when something happens. Gramps hears something. It's the same hiss that one hears just before a Xeno is about to do its thing. Gramps gets alerted, telling Mouse that this was going to be his only chance and that he should make it count. I mean, we're just getting started, and the old man is already sacrificing himself to save his grandson. Gramps attracts the attention of the Xeno, and an exceedingly reluctant Mouse runs as fast as he can, crying all the way because he just saw his beloved grandpa get impaled and shredded to pieces by the Xenomorph. Mouse runs like hell from that biomechanical monster, and now he just needs to get to the wall. That's what would buy him safety. But before he can reach the place, he bumps into another Xenomorph, and this one's even larger than the last. Sensing the fear in Mouse, the Xeno approaches slowly, making the child more afraid and therefore easier to kill. But just when the Xeno lunges for the final blow, something happens, and green blood starts to ooze out of the damned alien. Someone is here. Another human, or someone like a human, and this person is slashing the Xeno up left, right, and center. The art here is exceedingly beautiful and vibrant, and the experience is elevated because you know an alien is being slashed to pieces. And I mean, it's not like you see that every day, right? Anyways, this man is built like a tank, with a fine blade in hand, and Xeno blood eating through his uniform. He asks Mouse what he was doing outside the walls. Mouse is shocked. He had thought that only the Red King was strong enough to kill Xenomorphs, but it seems he was wrong. There was someone else as powerful as the Red King. Mouse asks him how his sword didn't melt despite the corrosive blood, and the Xeno killer tells him that the blade was made with an anti-corrosive treated carbon steel. All of this action has made Mouse forget where he is and what he was doing, but when reality finally hits him, he asks if he can follow the man into the city. Mouse is first told a straight-up no, but then, when the kid pushes him by reminding him that he's just a child, and asking if the man was never a child, if he was never scared, something inside him changes. He goes back to his own past. In the flashback panels, we're taken back to the time when the Xeno killer was still just a child. There were 3 others with him, his siblings in spirit, if not blood, being kept hostage by a mad scientist who not only turned the 4 kids into cyborgs, but also tortured them to push their limits. We come back to the present, but this jog down memory lane has made the man see his younger self in Mouse, and he agrees to escort him to the walls. Along the way, Mouse asks him what the purpose of his visit is, and Mouse is shocked when he's told that the Xenohunter is here to kill Amir. Once inside the colony, Mouse helps his newfound friend with a secret passageway into the palace. Now, that scientist we saw, also known as the Good Doctor, had turned all 4 kids into cyborgs, yeah? And we see a bit of what our Xeno-killer Idris can do in this panel. To sneak into the palace and past the guards, the man camouflages himself, not through clothing or props, but with his very skin. His skin color changes and he builds some kind of field around himself that makes him practically invisible. But once inside, something happens to him. Something tries to take over his mind, but by the time he can take control of the situation, the camouflage stops working. Now, it's not an issue as such because he makes quick work of the few guards who do manage to spot him, but the captain of the guards rushes to the spot, asking him to lay down his weapon or be killed. This is when Amir makes his presence known and says, "I'm afraid you couldn't do that on your best day, Captain, but I do appreciate your loyalty." The Red King then asks his men to stand down and leave the room before addressing the intruder as Little Brother. Clearly, the Red King was one of the cyborgs that the Good Doctor had created, and it turns out that sometime in the past, the 3 other kings had driven this guy out. In fact, he had even been hunted by them, and our hero happens to be the Blue King. Amir knew that the Blue King had come to assassinate him, and a fight broke out between them. Amir was clearly the better fighter, but it looked like the Blue King was pulling his punches for some reason. In fact, Amir tells us the reason. The Blue King needed no weapons or blades. He himself was the ultimate weapon. The Blue King wasn't letting his programming take him over, presumably because the programming would turn him into a ruthless killer who would become okay with killing innocents, just like Amir was doing. Amir reminds them that if the Good Doctor taught them anything, it was that the price of weakness was death. And by the last panel of the first issue, Amir turns into a cyborg monstrosity with claws for fingers, his body turning red, and his eyes glowing bright red like 100-watt LEDs. Issue number 2, The 4 Kings. The second issue begins with an explosive fight sequence between the Red King and the Blue King. Remember that anti-corrosive sword the Blue King used to kill the Xenomorph? Well, he strikes Amir with it with all his might and force, and Amir blocks it with his bare arm. That alone should tell you just how strong the Red King is. This fight is also when we technically learn that the Blue King's real name is Idris. Amir is pissed off that Idris killed the men he had sent to kill him, but not because Amir lost his men, it's because those men ensured that his subjects remained safe and loyal. Idris questions Amir's care for the safety of his subjects because he was the one sending them as offerings to the Xenomorphs. Amir responds by telling him that the tithe maintains balance. Staggered offerings balanced with regular hunts keep the hive manageable. Additionally, much like Amir, the other cyborg siblings, Zane, Aisha, and even Idris were given quadrants of sovereign to rule, but somehow Idris couldn't manage the Xenomorph infestation and ended up losing his people to the Xenos. Those who survived came to the Red King's city, and the fight continues throughout the entirety of this back and forth. Amir keeps on hurting his little brother. There's blood and bones. Things are getting smashed and broken, but enough is enough. Idris's programming starts to take over. There's a neural override, and before you know it, Idris grabs Amir's left arm and rips it from his body. The man is finally down, but somehow he's also relieved because Idris is finally listening to the programming. Apparently, the smug bastard of a scientist had given Idris the most refined tactical enhancements born of the Good Doctor's last-minute inspirations. And that's why he's called Little Brother by the rest of the cyborgs, because he was the last to be turned into a cyborg. Even though Amir's arm has just been torn off, the blood flow has already stopped because of a synthetic coagulant the Good Doctor had put in all of his creations. Idris raises his sword to finish what he started, and Amir's last words are, "Listen to your programming. Be strong, be ruthless, willing to..." Well, Idris doesn't really let him finish that sentence, but I'm sure Amir was asking Idris to do exactly what the Good Doctor had built them to do, be willing to kill. Idris walks out of the throne room and then the castle, with thousands of folks just shocked and surprised that the seemingly unkillable Red King was indeed dead and that he had been slain by a single man. Not an army, not a coup, just one man who was dedicated enough. Once his job is done, Idris leaves Amir's town and heads to his next destination, but along the way, he senses that someone is following him. One xenomorph slaying later, this stalker turns out to be Mouse. The poor kid has nothing left in the city, especially since the Red King is dead and anarchy is going to become the new norm. Naturally, he just wants to tag along with Idris, and the man eventually agrees. After dusk that evening, they camp in the wilderness, where Idris reveals how he and his siblings were created, or rather upgraded, to fight the xenomorph infestation. But unlike his siblings, Idris never got comfortable with the idea of killing just about anyone and everyone. He didn't believe in that kind of power, and maybe that's the reason why he was chased by his 3 siblings. He then asks Mouse to get some sleep before they're on the move again, but when Mouse wakes up, he realizes that Idris is gone. However, he did leave behind enough supplies, as well as a weapon, for Mouse to get back to the wall safely. The man's next destination is the Green King's city, which lies across a desolate mountain range devoid of even xenomorphs. They don't go there because there's no humans there. No prey is to be found for 100 miles. That's because no normal person could survive out there without some serious environmental gear or a modular shelter. But Idris? Well, Idris is the Blue King, and he's never been normal. After multiple days of trekking, mountain climbing, and surviving the worst ever desert of ice and snow, Idris finally makes it to the Green King's city. But something is wrong with this place. There are 0 humans to be spotted. It's a strange sight, but whatever the case may be, Idris keeps pushing ahead, trying to find the castle. But the poor guy walks straight into a trap and falls into imprisonment. One hard landing and a brief blackout later, Idris finds himself bound in specialized rope, something that would take forever to break out of. Furthermore, there's a neural stun inducer on the cell door, so if Idris tries to get out of the binding, he'll get zapped like hell if he grabs the bars. And all of this is tech from the old lab, his old home, the good doctor's home. And of course, the Green King, Zane, his brother, is behind all of it. It takes a while, but Zane finally shows up, and although he's happy to see Idris, he's planning to kill his little brother. And that's where our second issue ends. Final thoughts. Despite the xenomorph only appearing once in each issue, I for one was pretty thrilled by this comic. Saladin Ahmed should be given credit for penning an alien story that goes beyond synthetics and colonial marines. Additionally, the art by Carlos Nieto never fails to impress, especially during the fight sequence between Idris and Amir. The vibrant use of color and the stylistic choices make it a worthwhile read, and as soon as the next issue hits the shelves, I'm going to be buying it and reading it, so stick around if you want to hear the rest of the story. Oh, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting those like, subscribe, and share buttons. Those 3 clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these awesome videos in the future. But for now, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a great day. We hope to see you soon in the next one.